it's been going good.
David, I wonder if you saw on the All or Nothing documentary that was done on the Cardinals, in the second episode of that series, there was a scene where in the draft room on draft day 2015, the Cardinals were on the phone with Amir Abdullah in the second round, and they thought that they had him because the next pick, they were probably going to take Amir Abdullah. Then the Lions took him, and so that paved the way for you to get picked here. Did you see it? And does that seem a little bit weird to see?
I did see that. It was a little weird, but, it worked out well. It worked out great for me. I'm just blessed that it did work out that way. Came to a great organization, great team, a lot of great veterans on the team. And BA is so good at not just using me effectively in the running game, but also in the passing game.
That's Bruce Arians, your head coach. And, just looking a little bit at your track record, you had a 203-yard receiving game in college against Iowa. So has pass catching always come naturally to you?
Definitely. It has definitely come natural. Played running back and receiver in high school. I was getting recruited to play athlete, played receiver for a little bit in college at UNI until they moved me to running back. So it's always been natural to me.
We're with David Johnson, breakout running back of the Arizona Cardinals. So, David, the most interesting part of your story, at least to me, is that when you were in college, you stayed at Northern Iowa over the summer instead of going home. And one summer, you had a job removing asbestos from, I guess, college dorms. Is that right? Can you tell me about that job and tell me how much fun it was?
So, like you said, that was my first summer in college. We had to get a job in order to stay there and work out. That was our thing that we had to do, and I did asbestos removal.
Were you also taking classes at the time, or no?
No, I didn't have to take classes. I was able.
So you're just working out,
just working out. But having that asbestos job was tough working out because I was in there wearing a full suit with a mask in the hot heat in a building with no AC, obviously, because we had to remove the asbestos, and that's the glue that's in tile, that's in the drywall and stuff. And X did it too, also on my team, and we were in there sweating.
Who did it? Also?
Xavier Williams.
Oh, okay, all right.
He was one of our D linemen, and we were in there sweating, losing so much weight. It was tough to keep our weight on. And so what we had to do was go in there and scrape the glue off with these little, look like chisels type things. You had to go and scrape the glue off of the tile, under the tile, and scrape up the tiles. And then we had to go in there and knock down the drywall. And, man, that was one of my toughest jobs I've ever had because, the drywall gets a little itchy.
And it's probably 90 degrees.
90 degrees humid, and we had no AC. It was a tough job.
Wow. I bet you do that, and you start to think to yourself, I never want to work for a living. I better be good at football.
Yes, that is the first thing that came to my mind after the first day working out there. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to make this football thing last as long as I can so I do not have to have a job like this.
But the other years you were there, I heard stories about you're a pretty good handyman. What did you do?
So my last 3 summers there, I ended up doing maintenance at the dorms where I was going around every room in the dorms and fixing up the rooms from the students that stayed there during the year. And what I did was unclog drains, fix windows, which I did a lot, fix dressers, bids, basically everything that had to do with the dorm room. And me and a couple other guys would go in there. We had our own room, go fix blinds, fix lights. I mean, I learned how to do a lot of stuff being a handyman.
Well, your post-career ought to be kind of fun. You could maybe be a carpenter or be something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I learned a lot of stuff from that, and maybe, who knows, I might end up building my own house someday.
Yeah. Back on the MMQB podcast with Peter King with David Johnson. So, David, I always am curious when a guy comes from college football to the pros, and I remember on draft day they showed some highlights of you. It was either on ESPN or NFL Network, and you were always running away from people, and you weren't really, I didn't know the physical side of you existed. And then you came to the NFL, and I think one of the things that has pleasantly surprised the Cardinals and a lot of people around the league is that you can run between the tackles. You can break tackles. You can be physical. Is that a side of you that we just didn't see at Northern Iowa?
I think so. I think that was one of the things because that's one of the things I was getting knocked on, actually, coming into the pros, is that a lot of the scouts were saying I wasn't physical. But if you watch the film, it was probably the highlights were me, breaking tackles or making a move instead of trying to hit the guy and truck him. And I think that's what they're saying, and I definitely felt like I showed them differently when I got to the league, being able to, like you said, get those short yards, being able to run downhill and going in between the tackles and getting the yards needed.
I think when I think of you in 2016, I think of your run against the Jets on Monday Night Football, where you flashed back to the left across the formation. Even though they're not having a great year, that's a really good defensive front. And you could see, because half the runs that you had, you just ran into a brick wall in that game. But explain what you saw on that run that allowed you to run all the way left and break it for a touchdown.
So with that run, it was a zone or a power to the left, coming from right to left. And
so your assignment was to run left?
Yep, my assignment was to run left. We had a pulling guard Earl was our pulling guard, and so before the play starts, I look at outside, see the technique of the outside linebacker or DN, and I seen he was a 9. And I knew Earl was going to
explain that for people who don't know.
So a 9 is so our tight end. A 9 is the guy. He's lined up outside of the tight end, outside shoulder of the tight end. That's a 9 technique, and that's how he was lined up. And we had Earl pulling around, and Jermaine was that tight end. He had a great block on that 9 technique. Earl came around, and I knew I had to cut it inside. Earl came around and had a great block. At first, I thought the guy overshot it. That linebacker that was the linebacker over the top, but he actually ended up getting pushed by Earl, getting pushed past the hole, and I was able to cut up. And then I looked to outside, and I seen that Larry Fitzgerald and John Brown had great blocks also, and I seen green grass. So I bounced it outside, and, the rest was a foot race, and all those guys were continuing to block down the field.
That is really valued here, isn't it? Wide receivers blocking downfield.
Oh, yeah. Very valued a lot because those runs are the ones that get running backs going past the second level or going past the first level. Getting those longer runs is those guys continue to block down the field, especially those receivers that are really good at it.
I also, when I watch you run sometimes, I think of something that Adrian Peterson once said. I did a story on him for Sports Illustrated once, and I asked him, so when you're running, and you're trying to break free and see freedom and get beyond the defense, what are you looking for? And he said, the only thing I look for when I run is I look for colors. So if we're playing Tampa, I'm looking red, okay? And, whatever, I'm looking at the color of the jersey, and I'm saying, run away from him in whatever direction it is, except backwards. So do not run at, those guys. So what do you look for when the ball gets in your hand and you look up? Tell me what you're looking for.
That's exactly right. Color. Biggest thing is looking at color, opposite color, and the leverages of guys. If they're outside leverage with the linebacker, is he outside leverage or the way he's technique coming up to try to tackle me? That's what I'm looking at. And then, right at the point of contact, a lot of it's kind of instincts, because it's happened so quick that a stiff arm or a spin or a jump cut is all really instincts. But at first, I'm looking at the opposite color, seeing what leverage, seeing what technique that defender's having on me.
We're with David Johnson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals. David, I wonder when you start having success and you go out and you're at a restaurant or you're at the mall, instead of people saying, hey, can I have your autograph, do they now say, hey, you're helping me win my fantasy league? I mean, to me, that is so overrun American society. 37 million people are playing fantasy football right now. How much of that do you hear?
All the time. All I hear about is fantasy football. No matter who it is, no matter which team that person likes. If they like the Eagles, if they like Tampa Bay, they are more happy that I won them their fantasy game than their favorite team losing. And that's all I hear.
Matthew Berry the other night, the ESPN fantasy guru, probably the most famous fantasy football guy in America, tweeted out Well, now it's a contest between David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott for 2017 number one running back. And I'm saying, can't we just enjoy 2016 first? Are we still thinking about 2017?
Oh, I'm definitely thinking about 2016. I'm thinking about, today's practice that we had, tomorrow's practice when it comes. I'm taking it day by day, play by play, and moving forward from there.
David, how hard is it for you to not think a year and a third into your career, man, I've really arrived. Look at me, I'm running for 100 yards. I'm scoring touchdowns every week. So how hard is it for you to sort of stay David Johnson, the hungry guy?
Actually, it's not hard at all. With the veterans we have, BA is very good at keeping me
Bruce
level.
Arians, yeah.
Bruce Arians is very good at keeping me level. Letting me know those mental errors that I had. Like you see after those post-game interviews, he'll tell the media what I did wrong, even though some other people might have thought I had a good game. And I know I messed up. I know I want to correct on those mistakes I had. And when it comes down to it, I always think about, where I started at. And, I was humbled early on, not getting recruited high, and that's what I always bring myself back to.
Were you not recruited by any Division I schools?
Not at all. I didn't have not one scholarship.
Where was your high school?
High school was Clinton, Iowa, and I didn't have not one D1 scholarship. Had a maybe, possibly gray shirt from Iowa. Didn't know what it was at the time, so I definitely couldn't take that. Didn't really show any interest, and I didn't have any. I only had two offers from D1 AA schools.
Northern Iowa and what?
Illinois State.
Why did you go to Northern Iowa?
Northern Iowa was, I had a teammate from Clinton who played there. And then I went there for a visit, and it felt like a great fit for me. I met with all of the Christian athletes. FCA was really big there. Fellowship Christian Athletes were there, and I'm really big into my Christian faith, And, it felt like a great fit.
So your upbringing, you really, you had at times a very tough upbringing, you and your sisters and your mom. So what was the key to making it? What happened in your life that helped you make it instead of not making it and just becoming just another guy?
I think the biggest thing with me was that I kept myself busy. I feel like a lot of kids nowadays, when they're not playing sports or they're not doing activity. I mean, I was on a dodgeball league in elementary all the way growing up until high school, and I just kept myself busy. When they start getting bored, having free time, that's when I feel like a lot of the younger kids get into trouble. And
how were you at dodgeball?
I'm good. Oh, they call me glue hands, man. I could. That's probably another reason why I'm pretty good at catching. Is dodgeball helped out a lot. But that's one of the biggest things, and also keep my grades right and doing the right thing.
There probably aren't many players in the NFL who are one of triplets. So you were a triplet. Your two sisters were born on either side of you. Is that right?
Yep, I'm the middle.
Yeah. So what does your mom tell you about, when she birthed triplets?
The first thing I heard is she couldn't see her feet. It was tough for her to walk, and
because she was so pregnant.
Yeah, she was so. The belly was so big from having three of us, and the biggest thing is that she couldn't see her feet. It was tough for her to bend over and stuff, and we ended up being premature babies. I think born early. I don't know how many weeks, but I know we were premature, and it was tough for her.
How much of your success do you owe to your mother?
She has came a long way, and she's raised us good. Kept us, tried to keep us out of trouble. So she's done a good job when we were getting raised. Finishing
up with David Johnson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals. So David, I was going to ask you about the tough love from Bruce Arians, okay? Because you have these great games, and then he doesn't give you a game ball, and he always says there are things that you can do better. So how do you feel about this tough love?
Oh, it's great. Doesn't let me get complacent, and it keeps me striving and getting better and learning and continue to growing and being an NFL player.
David Johnson, really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
This is the MMQB Podcast. QB Podcast.
A couple of thoughts in the wake of the news in Week 7. I just thought this after being at the Arizona-Seattle game in Glendale, Arizona on Sunday night. And I thought, how interesting it is that a game that